The hardest part of the plan to get Janice Avery was to plant the note. They sneaked into the building the next morning before the first bell. Leslie went several yards ahead so that if they were caught, no one would think they were together. Mr. Turner was death on boys and girls he caught sneaking around the halls together. She got to the door of the seventh grade classroom and peeked in. Then she signaled to Jess to come ahead. The hairs prickled up on his neck. Lord, how will I find her desk? I thought you knew where she sat. He shook his head. I guess you'll have to look in every one until you find it. Hurry, I'll be the lookout for you. She closed the door quietly and left him shuffling through each desk, trying to be careful not to make a mess, but his stupid hands were shaking so much that he could hardly pull anything out to look for names. Suddenly, he heard Leslie's voice. Oh, Mrs. Pierce! I've been standing here waiting for you. Lord, the seventh grade teacher was right there in the hall, heading for this room. He stood frozen. He couldn't hear what Mrs. Pierce was saying back to Leslie through the closed door. Yes, ma'am. There is a very interesting nest on the south end of the building, and since, Leslie raised her voice even louder, you know so much about science, I was hoping you could take a minute to look at it with me and tell me what built it. There was a mumble of a reply. Oh, thank you, Mrs. Pierce. Leslie was practically screaming. It won't take but a minute, and it would mean so much to me. As soon as he heard their retreating footsteps, he flew around the remaining desks until, oh joy, he found one with a composition book that had Janice Avery's name on it. He stuffed the note on top of everything else inside the desk and raced out of the room to the boys' room, where he hid in one of the stalls until the bell rang to go to homeroom. At recess time, Janice Avery was in a tight huddle with Wilma and Bobby Sue. Then, instead of teasing the little girls, the three of them wandered off arm in arm to watch the big boys' football. As the trio passed them, Jess could see Janice's face all pink and prideful. He rolled his eyes at Leslie. She rolled hers back at him. As the bus started to pull out that afternoon, one of the seventh grade boys, Billy Morris, yelled up to Mrs. Prentice that Janice Avery wasn't on the bus yet. It's okay, Miss Prentice, Wilma Dean called up. She ain't riding this evening. Then in a loud whisper, reckon you all know that Janice has a heavy date with you-know-who. Who? Asked Billy. Willard Hughes. He's so crazy about her he can't hardly stand it. He's even walking her all the way home. Yeah? Well, the 304 just pulled out with Willard Hughes on the back seat. If he's got a big date, he don't seem to know much about it. You lie, Billy Morris. Billy yelled a cuss word, and the entire back seat plunged into a heated discussion as to whether Janice Avery and Willard Hughes were or were not in love and were or were not seeing each other secretly. As Billy got off the bus, he hollered to Wilma, You just better tell Janice that Willard is going to be mad when he hears that she's spreading all over school. Wilma's face was crimson as she screamed out the window. Okay, you dummy. You talk to Willard. You'll see. Just ask him about the letter. You'll see. Poor old Janice Avery, Jess said as they sat in the castle later. Poor old Janice. She deserves everything she gets and then some. I reckon, he sighed. But still, Leslie looked stricken. You're not sorry we did it, are you? No, I reckon we had to do it, but still what? He grinned. Maybe I got this thing for Janice like you got this thing for killer whales. She punched him in the shoulder. Let's go out and find some giants or walking dead to fight. I'm sick of Janice Avery. The next day, Janice Avery stomped onto the bus, her eyes daring everyone in sight to say a word. Leslie nudged Maybelle. Maybelle's eyes went wide. Did ya? Shh. Yes. Maybelle turned completely around and stared at the back seat. Then she turned back and poked Jess. You made her that mad? Jess nodded, trying to move his head as little as possible as he did so. We wrote that letter, Leslie whispered, but you mustn't tell anyone, or she'll kill us. I know, said Maybelle, her eyes shining. I know.